Coming to you from the depressed White Sox fan studios, this is the Believe in the Southside Boys. I am Steve-O. You can find me on Twitter at Drunk Shy Sox Fan. I might change that to at Depressed Shy Sox Fan over the offseason here, but I'll pass it over to my co-host to introduce himself.
What's going on, Steve? Good to be back. It's that Depressed White Sox Fan. It's your boy Carey. Man, I know we keep on saying depressed, but like I'm just at a loss for words more than depressed now. So
Yeah.
I'm ready to get this episode going. I know we've got a lot to say. I know before we started this, you're like, I got a shit ton to say. And you know what? We're going to get everything off our chest and pretty much shit on the White Sox. I think that's what's going to happen today.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, you are going to see a whole nother side of me. I'm usually like level-headed. I usually try to take things in stride. No, I mean, it's the end of the season. The White Sox are officially eliminated from the playoffs. I mean, they were at the beginning of this week.
They were at the beginning of the season.
Shit. I mean, we'll get into that too, and how this front office did not set this team up for success. But depressed isn't even the right word anymore. You're right, Carey. I'm actually just pissed. I am just angry. I am upset. Like, I don't even know what the stages of grief are. But I'm into the anger phase right now. I'm just straight up pissed off. My first talking point, and it kind of goes into how the White Sox have been over the past week. And you know what? I'm going to get into that in the comments. And thank you for Brian and Spag and anybody else that's going to be joining us live today on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. You guys can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts as well. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, wherever you get your podcasts, we're on there. I'm seeing that I was missed at the games this weekend. And I understand that. I had Bruhan Luke actually text me and be like, "Hey, you haven't been to any games in a while. What's going on?" Well, like, first off, life. Like, I'm busy. Number two, the White Sox suck. I don't want to go to fucking games, especially if I don't have tickets to the games. I'm not going to go out of my way to go get tickets to go see a shitty ball club that's completely out of it. I mean, and not just out of it in regard to the playoffs. They're dead. They have no motivation. This is the most disgusted I've ever been in my 27 years of living on this earth to be a White Sox fan.
Yeah.
Because this team was supposed to run away with this division. They were supposed to win this division by, I don't even know what the number was that AJ Pierzynski said. 10, 15 games, 20 games, whatever he said. I know that's ridiculous. But every projection at Pacoda, Baseball Prospectus, whatever you wanted to use to rank where the White Sox were going to be this year, everybody said the White Sox were going to run away with this division. They were going to run into their problems when they got to the postseason. And obviously they ran into problems way before that. I cannot believe, though, and I'm gonna hit the players first because I don't think they're the most responsible. I cannot believe how hard this team gave up after Tuesday's game. Not only do you get dicked in that 11th inning, shout out to that strong bullpen that Rick Hahn put together this year. You come back and you lose back-to-back against Cleveland after that. Then you get swept by fucking Detroit, by the Detroit Tigers, who should be more checked out than your ball club. And instead you got swept at home.
Steve, I don't know what else to tell you. This team doesn't give a shit, right? You said something in there, right? How this team would figure it out in the playoffs, right? They if they were unprepared in the season, right? You said, is it kind of on the lines of what you said, right? Like, they'd figure it out when they got there, right? The problem with that is Rick Hahn knew going into this season, because when you saw last year, you had so many injuries, and you had the Brian Goodwins, the Billy Hamiltons, right? You had those feel-good stories come in and supplemented those losses just fine. That didn't happen this year, right?
No.
Not one bit. And, while you had the typical Eloy, typical Luis, typical Yohan, and typical Tim Anderson injuries, which happen every fucking year now, it's just inevitable. They're missing like 30 to 40 games. Um, your other guys, like Grandal, sucked. Abreu had a great year, didn't hit any home runs, right? So everything that should have been addressed before the season started, right, wasn't. And you're seeing the exact result of that. That nothing is not they've done nothing right with this organization, with this team. And I know you wanted to start with the players, but I mean, you got to have the players first, right? And they did nothing to do that. So, a lot
Well,
of people said the same thing.
yeah,
They said if they didn't supplement the team right, what if what happens last year happens this year? They're not going to get as lucky, and that's exactly what fucking happened.
yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect segue to what I want to talk about second today, Carrie, and that's moving forward. Okay. And supplementing this team. And I think the key word here is supplement, right? Because I think there's a lot of people out on the White Sox Twitter sphere and people who blog or people who are interested in this team, the peanut gallery in a sense, want to say, hey, overhaul this thing. But how are you going to overhaul it? I don't think there's any way to overhaul this team with the way the contracts are, with the youth that is on this team. I mean, go ahead, name some players that you think should be cut or traded, like one or the other. I mean,
That's the problem, Steve. Is this team is fucked? I mean, like nobody's gonna take Yoan's contract. Nobody. He
and
is
you
not.
don't sell him. Don't sell
No,
him at this low of a point. Okay.
no. It'd be stupid to do it, but then you're stuck with him, and if he sucks, you're still stuck with a guy who can't hit. Right? Yasmani Grandal gonna make $18 million. He's staying. You're not gonna DFA him. The White Sox aren't gonna do
Yeah.
that. I mean, there's more. There's a lot. I mean, your
I mean,
whole bullpen sucks, and they're all there for next year.
except for Graveman. I mean, you're probably letting Graveman walk, right? You
No,
have to at this.
he's
Is it a 2-year deal?
2-year deal.
That's right. It's a 2-year deal. Right. I mean,
Every single guy in there is on a 2-year deal. At
You're
least.
right. Yeah. They're at least around for next year, basically, all the key guys, right? It's Joe Kelly under contract, right?
Jake Diekman.
Jake Diekman. I don't know about Diekman. I'd have to look up his contract
he's definitely here next year.
Around again for next year. You've got a bunch of guys you've got money wrapped up into that are a bunch of underperformers or a bunch of guys that are hit or miss. Graveman had a
Lucas
great
Giolito.
first. Yep. Well, I'll get there too. I mean, Graveman had a great first half of the season. He's your loser today. I mean, he looked absolutely god awful and has looked god awful the past couple months for the most part. Leury. I mean, why are you signing this guy to a 3-year deal? A guy who had an OPS of 500 this year. OPS of 500. Okay?
I think his WRC was. I think his OPS plus was about 40.
Yep, that would add up. That would definitely add up. But literally, that number was 500 on the dot today.
So bad.
Yeah, I mean, and you brought up Giolito, and here's the thing: I don't think you trade Giolito. You're not going to get a guy on the free agent market that's going to be your number 4 pitcher, hopefully, right? As long as everybody comes back healthy, right? And the rotation stays the way it does. He's your number 4 pitcher. And on a last year of ARB, I'll pay that for a number 4 pitcher. Pitching is not the problem. Pitching is not the problem. And
I agree.
Our guy Brian in here said the retooling begins. Yeah, I mean, you do have to retool.
There's no choice.
But you got to do it properly, right?
But you have no choice when you go out there as Rick Hahn and say, talk to me after the parades. You have no choice but to figure this out with this core because you put all your cards out there, So to go along with, Giolito, I mean, they're not going to non-tender him. It's the White Sox. They're not going to non-tender him. Get real. Plus, I will say, if there's one person I think that can actually bounce back into their real form, I really do think it could be Giolito more than a Moncada, more than a Grandal. I really do. Truly believe that. So there's no way they let him walk, but you bring him back next year and Giolito still sucks.
Yeah.
we were right back where you started.
I worry about Grandal just because of the age, just
Absolutely.
because of the mileage.
Catcher, being a catcher.
And there was the way he hit this year.
Ugh.
Even when he was making contact, it was so weak. Like it looked like he was swinging a pool noodle up there, up at the plate.
I
And
just can't believe there's that much drop off with him.
yeah, it's crazy.
It's
right?
absurd.
The regression's wild. Moncada, Moncada's still so young, right? And that's why I'm not
Was he
willing
27?
27 years old. He's 27 years old. He's like 3 months younger than me. Not fully willing to write him off yet. However, it's going to take a lot of off-season work, a ton.
Yeah.
And it's going to take, I think, a good it takes good coaching. And
He's got to give a shit for one.
I mean, you think that's a thing?
I hate to be that boneheaded guy, but like, because I hate those guys that are like that. He doesn't care, blah blah blah. I've never been on that train, but like watching him the other day when they were losing to Cleveland, and he just like dogged like 3 plays in a row. You know,
Yeah.
I literally sat there and just went, "Fuck this guy." You know, like what is he doing? He's not doing shit.
I'll be honest. I don't think that's just him though. I think
it's not.
Half
it's
of
more
this.
than that.
I think that's half of this ball club. Okay, and I know it's the amount of money that you have put into him may seem ridiculous, but that's what you pay up front for a guy if you're sold on him. Okay,
that's what happens when you pay guys pre-arbitration.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that.
It can backfire 100%. It's what it's doing.
Yeah, I mean, sure, if you're willing to get the Ozzie Albies and Ronald Acuna type deals done, like the Atlanta Braves were able to, sure. But I mean, these were much larger contracts.
And they're on the Atlanta Braves, not on the Chicago White Sox, who can actually develop players.
Yeah, I was going to say player development is another issue too. But player development is something I'm going to get into later. But, the culture shift is another thing too, right? You talked about this lack of caring or this lack of hustle, right? It's crazy to see just this lack of motivation and this culture that's just totally around this ball club. It's totally defunct. Okay. Before I get into that too, I mean, we're talking contracts. AJ Pollock was brought up in the comments here. I mean, let's talk about how Rick Hahn turned the number 4 overall pick into 2 years of AJ Pollock.
What can we start at that the number 4 pick was a bad pick too? I'm willing to totally admit that. Like I'll go out there and say it. You know, Nick Madrigal stinks. Okay, like I know Jared Kelenic, he sucks too, but that should have been the easy pick right there. But once again, Rick Hahn and his team were just trying to be smart, so they turned Nick Madrigal into Craig Kimbrell, who stunk. Turned Craig Kimbrell into AJ Pollock after they said they were going to go get a left-handed power bat. Turn it into AJ Pollock, justifying it by saying he hit well against righties. Yeah, he's on the Dodgers, and they know how to put you in a good position, Rick. And that's why he sucked. So, like, it was just a train of suckage, you know? Like, from that second he got drafted, it was just like, suck, suck, suck. And that just defines Rick Hahn's GM career with the White Sox.
Well, I think something to keep in mind is that AJ Pollock in LA was a role player, right?
Yep.
I mean, he had 1 year in Arizona where he was on that all-star level, but he was a role player, right? The White Sox expected him with the already injury problems, and luckily he wasn't one of these guys that got hit by a major injury bug this year. But he was counted on to be an everyday starter, sometimes playing in center field when Robert was hurt, right? You can't do that with AJ Pollock. That's just not the kind of player he is. You're not paying him that kind of money. The Dodgers never expected him. If you're a championship caliber team, you can't expect AJ Pollock to be your 3rd or 4th best player. Nope. That's just not how it should work. Now, obviously, we were bringing up this AJ Pollock point to talk about Rick Hahn, right? I ran a Twitter poll earlier this week, a few days ago.
Talk about this clown.
So I'm going to pop it up here on the screen, right? Since the White Sox season is officially dead, I have one question to ask. Who's to blame the most? And I said, is it Reinsdorf Hahn, Tony La Russa, or other? Comment below, right? How?
I'm
How
pretty
is
sure.
White Sox Twitter willing to say that Jerry Reinsdorf,
I'll tell you
with
why.
a over $200 million payroll, with the number 7 payroll this year in Major League Baseball, how are you willing to say that he, at 54% of the vote, is most to blame? Go ahead, Kerry.
I'm pretty sure Sammy Davis Jr. voted on all of his burners. Like 1,000%, because he wants to always argue that it's Jerry Reinsdorf's fault with all the facts that you just gave, right? I mean, like literally the most money that this team's ever spent before, and we didn't even win our division, in the worst division in baseball. That is to blame for one person, and I agree. Actually, I will agree with Brian right here. It is a trickle down effect. I'm not saying
Starts at the top. You are
I'm
right.
not saying Jerry Reinsdorf's not to blame. Okay, I'm not. I am saying that Rick Hahn for this year and this team is 1,000%. It has to be blamed. He has to go. He cannot be in charge of this team anymore. 2 out of the 3 years you've made no trades in your contention year, that still baffles my mind. You know, like 2020 was probably the year to do it because everybody was healthy. Everybody wasn't figured out yet, you know, and they didn't do shit, right? They needed one more pitcher. They needed Lance Lynn, so they waited to the offseason to get him because he was cheaper. That is where Jerry comes in, right? But Rick Hahn needs to learn how to supplement that. Supplement having a guy like Jerry Reinsdorf as your owner. Look at the Rays. Look at the A's. Those teams figure it out, and they have literally the shittiest owners. The Guardians just won the division. Youngest team in baseball.
Yeah,
Their GM figured out how to win the division
exactly.
still.
You literally have Dolan as an owner.
Yeah,
in
like
Cleveland, right? And that
the
team
worst
just won
people
the
possible.
division when people were thinking they were going to finish. Most people were having them 3rd, 4th, or 5th, right?
Yeah. And they play good baseball. They're 10 games up right now. So it just shows that it's not always the owner.
Exactly.
It's
I have a
front
hard
office,
time blaming Jerry, right?
which is
I
so
just-
hard for
I
me to
can't.
say.
Exactly. I just can't. I get that there is not a $100 million contract on this team. I get that Machado and Harper are not on this team. I get that there was not guaranteed money thrown at these guys, and Jerry may have handcuffed the situation in those deals.
And the Tony situation too. He did.
Exactly, right? And he pushed Tony La Russa onto this team. However, what more can you ask of an owner in the second? Okay, so you've got what? 3rd largest market maybe in baseball?
Yeah, but he doesn't act like that. Come on.
But here's the deal. You're still and I hate to say this, when it comes to spending, when it comes to bringing in revenue, you're the number 2 team in the city, and you're still spending number 7 in the league.
Yeah.
I will take that every freaking
100%.
year. I will take that. Unless, for example, this team was 7th and they came up just short of winning a World Series this year. Then I'd say, okay, push it up to the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll take 7th every year. And
it just shows Rick Hahn just fucked this roster. I mean, how else can you justify anything else? I know you have Tony as your manager, and he was bad. Okay,
yeah,
Tony was bad, but Cairo's not that much better. I mean, and I think it's got to do with the roster, okay? Because this team just, they don't give a shit. They don't hustle. I mean, I forgot what I was just watching something. I think it was on MLB Network, and they were talking about the White Sox. They don't hustle. They don't field well. Actually, you know what? It was Jerry Blevins, the old reliever, talking with Chris Rose on his podcast, and he said, they don't field well. They strike out a ton. They're not hitting home runs. They don't hustle, and they're always hurt.
You got to be good at least a couple of those things.
And they didn't supplement anything in the midseason to, help with any of those factors. All they did was get a lefty reliever because Aaron Bummer wasn't going to be back till September. So, this is the direct result of that, right? I mean, this is Rick Hahn's baby, and his baby sucks.
Yeah. And listen,
nothing else I could say.
I get that Miguel Cairo isn't better, but right now he's a better option than Tony La Russa. I'll say that much.
I think you're a better option. I think we're better options.
I think like 99% of the baseball watching population is a better option than
I'd
Tony
rather
La
have
Russa.
Brian just yell, "I hate it here," the whole time he's, managing, and they'd still win.
And let me just get down to the point here is that this year shouldn't have happened. 2022, the way the White Sox season is ending, this shouldn't have happened. This team is too freaking talented to have this many issues. Everyone, and by everyone, I mean everyone, said they were going to win this division. Everyone, and I mean everyone, said it wasn't going to be particularly close. Hence the last Cleveland Guardians tweet on their Twitter page.
Yeah.
Everyone knows how much talent is on this team. You have so much talent. Young, and you've got veteran pieces.
They're experienced too now. Let's not. They got 2 years of winning and going
That's
to the.
True. Exactly.
They're experienced. So you just let the youngest team in baseball roll you over and spank you. Little spanky.
Yeah. And I think that goes back down to culture, right? There's a reason why so many guys on this team had career worst years. Yep. Everyone should see that it's time for a culture shift within this team. And to be honest with you, I think it starts with the GM.
Yeah.
I know people would love to see Jerry sell the team. I know people think that Kenny Williams might have some sort of impact in all of this. I think it starts with your GM who constructs the roster. And I think it also goes down to Chris Getz with, talent development.
Which we all know.
Why are you hanging on to these guys?
Chris Getz is just going to end up being our GM. That's probably what's going to happen. Let's be real here. The Sox don't go outside of the organization. I'm already seeing the foundation being laid down with Cairo and how they're not going to go outside the organization for a new coach, which they should, right? Do something else, okay? Jerry, your son just took over the Bulls, right? When Jerry was running the Bulls, he had Gar and Pax, the same things over and over, right? In-house people that he knows and trusts that didn't know shit, right? They were horrible at what they were doing, and it wasn't working, right? Jerry's son comes in. What does he do? Fires Gar Pax, hires AK, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should just look at that and be like, oh, shit, that happened in 2 years? 2 years' time, that this guy did stuff and pulled all the right strings and people wanted to come there and, a culture change is what you were saying.
I think that is a perfect comparison, and I will link it straight to my own fandom. I didn't want to watch the Bulls at all between the years of, 2013 and 2020. Zero reason to watch them, right?
No reason.
And obviously it's because they weren't competitive. Obviously it's because they really weren't bringing in any top tier talent, right? A lot, just a losing culture all in all together. However, where did that start? Front office, right? You get rid of Pax, you bring in Arturis, you bring in AK, and there's a complete shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just in a year and a half's time.
It's
wild.
What's happening, and then free agents want to actually go to that team.
Exactly. And sure, it would be nice to have, and I know he gets a ton of flack on Twitter for the way he acts and some of the stuff that he says. I would love to have a guy like Steve Cohen owning the Chicago White Sox.
Are you kidding me?
Because the dude spends out his ass and he
Yes.
trusts people to do their he puts people in position and says, you know what, you go and you do your job, right? And
That's
if you don't do your job, you're going to get axed.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of culture is how a winning team is brought about. That's how you go about and make money as an owner too, right? Jerry really cares about his bottom line and wasn't passive about it. That's how he would do it. However, that's just not feasible, right? Jerry's going to hang on to this team probably till the day he dies. So where do you go next? Kenny's in his back pocket. You go to Rick, right?
Exactly.
And you
And
tear it
that's the
down
whole
there.
thing. It's like you can't fire an owner, unless we can find some dirt on
Right.
him, like the Suns owner, and then get Jerry fired somehow.
Right.
But like, it's just not happening. So you have to really look at, okay, what's next? And like you're saying, it's Rick Hahn.
Yeah.
So
That's the first, and there's
get
5
somebody in
people,
here that
you
knows what
know,
the fuck they're doing.
you know my thing, my final 5, and I haven't done it in a while because I'm just so pissed off with this team. Right, on Twitter, I do my final 5 recaps of this team. I got 5 people, 5 departments or areas that I want to see cleaned out. Okay, the first one, obviously, Rick Hahn, right, gone. The guy who's missed on every big fish and has only been kept around because he promised this window, which now only has 1 year left in it, and you've won 2 playoff games. The second one, and I'm going to comment right here on the comment below from our guy Brian, squat thrust medicine ball work, Lotes instead of Gatorade. I'd have this team doing handsprings in no time. Listen, on a serious note, the training staff is absolutely atrocious.
Oh,
The amount of injuries that this team has had in the last 2 years that has held them back from reaching their true potential. How can this not be an area of like red flags everywhere?
I think it's a Reinsdorf thing. Look at Lonzo Ball.
James Kruk and whoever else is calling the shots for this training department. This, like, when we talk about hustle and heart, and remember, the comments that have come out being like, oh, the players have been told to ease up because they need, they still need to play for another 60 games this year, 80 games this year. It's not dudes being soft, okay? Yeah, they're getting injured, okay? This is from a lack of a good training staff, a lack of a good strength and conditioning program, and guys not being ready to play 150 games. So blame it on the heart, blame it on the guys not giving 110%. Sure, when you're injured, you're not able to give 110%. So get to the root of the issue. It's the training staff, okay? That's another one that I want to see gone. Third one's TLR, okay? I don't need to say anymore about TLR being out, okay? The fourth, I've harped on your guy Frank Macchiato, Carey. Menachino, even though the home run numbers have gone up a little bit over the past month, it didn't show for a majority of the season. This team has been built on hitting the long ball. Guess what they're not doing? And have hit awful numbers this year in regard to hitting the long ball. Like, it's ridiculous. Think about those Marlins teams.
I was just going to say, it's no secret. He's just not, he doesn't care about home runs and swing path like that. So he's got to go.
He's old school. He's cut from old cloth. Like,
that's why him and Tony were perfect for each other.
Right. And whether they were trying to do that and complement the two guys together, it just didn't work out. Okay. You need to do the opposite of what the Marlins did. The Marlins kept around Menachino. They got rid of Real Muto. They got rid of Stanton. They got rid of Yelich. They got rid of Ozuna. All those guys turned out to be better elsewhere. Enough said there. Last one's the analytics department.
The worst.
Get rid of Shelley Duncan. Get rid of whoever else is on his same mind path, and just expand, gut and expand all at once, and then hire somebody from one of these smaller market teams that's overperforming.
Yeah. Why aren't they reaching out to Rays guys? I mean, even the fucking Diamondbacks. Do you see how many good players are coming up for them recently? Like, all these top prospects. Like, what are we doing here? We're relying on the Chris Getz types. Like, what track record do they have? Like, it's not working. Nothing works for the White Sox. Nothing works for them, and it's depressing as fuck. Everything you mentioned. Do you realize how hard that is to just completely change that? The only way you change that is by a new owner. And that's what happened with the Mets, right? They had the worst owners before Stephen Cohn came in.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can't tear it down from ownership, you go to the next step. Okay. Yeah. Theo, Billy Beane are two great examples, Spag. Okay. Yes, they are anomalies, right? And they're totally opposite in the way in which they operate. Theo is so good at what he does because he convinces ownership to spend out their ass. And Billy Beane,
he develops.
And well, yes, on top of that, right? The youth development movement that we saw with the Cubs with Theo. And then Billy
for the
Bean
Red
is that
Sox.
opposite of looking at that analytics and pulling from that data and really being able to muster together a great lineup when you need to make ends meet, right? The White Sox are right in that middle. They don't need to play money ball, and they don't need to outspend everybody.
Which is the worst position to be in.
I disagree.
I don't.
Put the two together. You put the two together. Look at the Astros, okay? Look at the Astros.
They spend a lot of money, though.
They spend a decent amount of money. Don't get me wrong.
And they give out big contracts.
But
they develop.
Their youth movement, right? They don't need to be on par with the Mets and the Dodgers in order to be at the top of the AL every year, okay? They don't need to spend that kind of money, and it's because their development team is so good. Their youth development team is so good. Think about how much homegrown talent that a team like Houston has that's actually performing, right? The White Sox have that capability, but it needs to be coached. You have Luis, you have Yohan, you have Tim, you have Eloy. Build off of those pieces and then supplement. Those guys
too late?
It's not too late. Those guys are still so young. They need to be coached. Coaching is so, like, I know that the coaches don't go out on the field. The analytics department doesn't go out on the field.
But you have to prepare these guys.
But you have to prepare them, exactly.
Yeah. And they're never prepared. They're never playing, they're never in the right spot. They're always overthrowing a cutoff. They're always, running themselves into outs. They're getting ran out at third base, at home plate. I mean, nothing they do is ever right. And
yeah,
I think this is a deeper problem than just retooling in the next year. And sadly, Steve, all they're gonna do, and like, hear me out. I really think this is just gonna happen. They're gonna trot out the same fucking team with
one last hurrah.
It's gonna be the same team with Miguel Cairo as the manager, and they're gonna say, "Well, look what Miguel did."
I think the only reason why they trot everybody else out for one last hurrah, one last parade, is because Tony is managing, unfortunately, which absolutely sucks to say, and I absolutely hate saying it, but I think that's it. And who knows? Maybe that comes with the selling of the team from Jerry too. I don't know. It's speculation. That's all speculation. However, our guy Brian in here says the only reason why Theo would be interested is an ownership group. Well, guess who is a part of ownership group and has bidded on teams before and might find a perfect opportunity in the near future? Alex Rodriguez. And I would have no qualms about that. Yeah. So, well, Carrie, we're a little bit over the half-hour mark, which is actually impressive considering how much we've had to say today.
I know.
Do you want to wrap up this 2022 season with any final thoughts?
Yeah.
I guess we have one more episode
early.
before this, but
yeah, 100%. I'll just say this is, 2020 year is the year of suck. That's all I'll say. The year of White Sox suck from top down. Not one person did not suck. Not one person. Actually, one person this whole year did their job. Dylan Cease. One person. That's it.
We've seen flashes from a bunch of other guys.
Vaughn, I'll put up there. He was good. He needs to hit more home runs.
Exactly.
Besides that,
power numbers, man.
Just one person did
everything
they were asked to do and above. And we just wasted a Cy Young season of Dylan.
It starts from the top and it works its way down. That's all I'm going to say. And I will let whoever's listening to this now, as well as in the future, over podcasts, whether you listen to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Pocket Casts or wherever you listen to your podcasts, or if you watch this on YouTube in hindsight, remember it starts from the top up. Or pardon me, from the top
down.
And it goes down. Yeah. Exactly. So thank you to everybody that joined us live. I appreciate everybody who's been in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. A great place to join us for some live White Sox conversation every week. And thank you for those of you that are going to be listening over the podcast airwaves. Gary, this team sucks, but you're an amazing individual, and I'm glad I get to do this with you.
Absolutely. Likewise, Steven. Hopefully, maybe these podcasts in the off season aren't as depressing. So as
I
you can
know.
see, the lighting here is going down, so I'm getting just more and more depressed. So
That checks out. And my bourbon glass is empty. It needs a refill. Have a great week, everybody, and we will see you to talk a little bit about White Sox baseball and
just recap the season and then
exactly our hopes for 2023. Have a good one, everybody, and go Sox.
yeah.